Om Sai Ram. A warm welcome to all my Sai devotees. Today we are going to listen the sixth chapter of Sri Sai Satcharita, the narration of the story of Ram Janam celebrations. Whether in the worldly or spiritual life, whenever the Sadguru is the captain of the ship, he will steer the ship along with the passengers to the opposite bank. The very word Sadguru immediately brings to mind Sai as he stands in front of me and blesses with his hand on the head. As soon as the boon giving hand, which has the Udi from the Dhuni, touches my head, my heart goes into a rapture with inner happiness and my eyes brim over with love. How marvelous is the touch of the hand of the Guru, which has the power to destroy the subtle body, which is burnt to ashes at the touch of the hand. The subtle body, which otherwise cannot be burnt even by the inferno at the dissolution of the world. It can even steady the minds of those who are annoyed even by the accidental mention of God or by his tales, and speak intemperately. As soon as he puts his lotus like hand on the head, and accumulated sins of many previous births are washed off, and the loving devotees of Sai are purified. Having seen the comely features, you are choked with extreme bliss. Tears of happiness roll down, and the heart is overwhelmed with Ashtasatvik Bhava. He awakens the thought of oneness, the inner happiness reveals itself. It dissipates the twofold nature because of the oneness with God and evenly spread unity. When one starts reading the sacred books and the Puranas, the Sadguru comes to one's mind at every step. Sai is Rama and Krishna and makes us listen to his own life story. When listening to the Bhagavad Puran, Krishna himself becomes the embodiment of Sai, singing the praises of Uddhava for the good of his devotees. Even in casual conversations, incidents and stories of Sai's life unexpectedly are recalled to illustrate a point. Intent on writing, when you take up paper and pen in hand, words elude you, but when he makes us write at his command, it becomes difficult to cope with the flow of the words. The moment ego raises its head, he immediately suppresses it, and by creating the awareness of higher consciousness, he brings to the disciple a sense of fulfillment. When you surrender to the powerful Sai, body and soul, virtue, wealth, love, and deliverance are attained without striving and unasked. The fourfold path of karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, though each is distinct from the other, all led to the same goal. The path of bhakti is the thorny path, like the path through the prickly bubble forest. It is full of pits and potholes. One or two steps in the right direction takes you really close to God. You should avoid the thorns and step forward. You will reach the destination without fear. This is the only remedy, says the Guru Mahi very clearly. When the orchard of the mind is watered by devotion, detachment will grow, knowledge will blossom, union with the Supreme Spirit comes to fruition, and joy will burst forth. Avoiding the cycle of birth and death as a certainty, remember Supreme Soul is self-existent. It is the threefold concept Sat, Chit, Anand, truth, consciousness, and bliss. It appears by transformation in the visual image and actually manifests for the sake of the devotees. As Brahman became manifest through its threefold attributes, Maya became active and stirring sattva, rajas, tamas exhibited her qualities. When a particular shape is given to clay, it is called a pot rightfully. But when the pot breaks, it loses its name, form, and identity. The whole world is born of Maya, and both are cause and effect to each other. Thus, Maya itself manifests, as it were, with different limbs in the form of the world. If you look at the nature of Maya before the existence of the world, nothing is apparent. She was dormant in the Supreme Consciousness, though resident in it, she was not perceivable. Even if perceivable, it is actually the Supreme Self. When it is not perceivable, then also it is the Supreme Self. Thus, Maya is the Supreme Self. It cannot be distinguishable from the Supreme Self. In the beginning of Maya created lifeless, immovable, static objects from the inertia quality and completed the first part of her action. Afterwards, when the Supreme Self was conjoined with the Rajoguna of Maya, it revealed the mind of perseverance of essential activities, endowed with the aspects of both. Later on, out of the Sattvaguna of Maya was created the intellect which, when combined with the divine bliss of the Supreme Self, completed the whole process of creation. Thus, Maya, susceptible to create modifications, though she is motivated towards activities, does not create the things which are above mentioned, and the three gunas remain unmanifest. Maya cannot be apparent unless she performs actions according to the three gunas. She can exist without appearance and practice non-action, passivity. Maya is the creation of the Supreme Being, while the universe is the creation of Maya. All this is Brahman, means that the world, Maya, and the Supreme Being are all united and one. Those who keenly desire and are intent on realizing this unity should refer to the Vedas and the Shrutis. The Vedas, Shastras, Shrutis, Smritis, teachers, and scriptures give us the knowledge, the discriminating intellect, and ultimate happiness. In the home of my devotees, food and clothing will never be lacking. This is an assurance given by Sri Sai, and the devotees were aware of this. Those who wholeheartedly worship me and lovingly always serve me, I look after their well-being. This I know to be my motto. This is also the affirmation of the Bhagavad Gita. Sai says to accept this as universal truth. There will never be shortage of food and clothing. Therefore, do not hanker after them. One should seek honor at the door of God and should beg only from God. Ask only for His blessings. Worldly prestige should be left aside. Why are you satisfied by the honor given to you by society? And why are you infatuated by that? Rather seek through intense devotion to move your chosen deity to compassion and to express your joy through copious streams of sattvic bhava. May you find joy in such striving. Let all the faculties be seized with such a devotional urge, so that the passions of the senses may be transformed completely and sprout devotional worship. What desire will then remain? May such devotion be your constant preoccupation, leaving no relish for anything else. May the mind be engaged in constant chanting of my name and let everything else be forgotten. Then there will be no thought of body, home, and wealth. The heart will be fixed on the infinite happiness. the mind will be balanced and serene, and it will find fulfillment in itself. A contented mind is the surest sign of association with the holy. How can a wandering mind be considered as being surrendered to God? Therefore, with full concentration, O listeners, listen to the explanation with faith. By listening to Sai Satcharita, let your mind be inclined towards devotion. Along with the narration, you will feel contented. Your wayward mind will find peace. Agitation will disappear and you will achieve happiness. Now we will go back to the earlier thread of the story about the renovation of the masjid and the kirtan about the birth of Ram. Let us proceed with the narration. There was one devotee by name Gopal who had great devotion for Baba. He spent his time in ceaseless chanting of Baba's name. He had no children. Later, with Sai's blessing, he begot a son. His mind was thus happy. So Gopal thought of holding a yatra or an urus yearly in the Shirdi village. Everybody would be joyous. Tatya Khote, Dada Khote, Madhav Rao and other leading devotees approved of this idea and began to make the preparations. But for such annual festivals, there were certain regulations. The permission of the district officer was required. When efforts were made to secure the permission, the perverse Kulkarni from the village went against them and put obstacles in the way. When the Kulkarni came in the way, look what was the result. The district officer issued an order that the yatra should not be held at Shirdi, but to hold the yatra in Shirdi was also Baba's wish, and he had commanded them to fulfill this along with his blessings. The villagers persevered and tried their utmost. The authorities changed the earlier order and honored with the wishes of the people. Since then, according to Baba's wish, the yatra takes place on Ram Navami. Tatya Khote looks after the arrangement and a large crowd gathers. On Ram Navami day, devotional singing and worship take place to the accompaniment of drums and other wind instruments. People flock there from all four quarters in the large number. Every year, 2 new flags are ceremoniously carried in procession and tied to the dome of the masjid and permanently fixed there. Out of the 2, one would be of Nimonkars and the other Damu Annas. They are taken with pomp in procession and they fly high on the top of the dome. Now listen to the interesting account on how the celebration of Ram Navami originated from the Urus, which is an unusual the pleasure and glory of Shirdi, originating from the Ram Navami, was celebrated for the first time in the year 1833, and since then it continues uninterruptedly to be held to this day. The famous Krishna Jogeshwar Bhishma was the originator of the idea of celebrating the birth of Ram, which he thought would be greatly beneficial for all. Till then, it was the only of the Urus for which the people participated. Since that year, the beautiful festival of the birth of Ram took place. Once, as Bhishma was peacefully sitting in the Vara and Kaka was ready to leave for the masjid along with the puja paraphernalia in the heart, he was thinking of Sai Darshan and outwardly he was enthusiastic about the Urus. Kaka had come a day earlier to Shirdi for the celebration. Considering it an opportune moment, Bhishma asked Kaka, "Would you give me help for a good cause that has inspired me? Here every year Uru is held on the day which also the birth year of Ram. Therefore, this is a natural opportunity to hold the ceremony of birth of Ram." Kaka liked the idea and asked Bhishma to obtain Baba's consent. It would depend on his wish. Then there would be no delay in the work. But the celebration there would have to be Kirtan. That was a problem, for where would one get the Haridas in a small village? That was the only question. Bhishma said, I would be the Kirtankar. You also accompany me on the harmonium, and Radha Krishnabai would be prepared to make the Suntvara at the proper time. Come, then let us go to Baba. Any delay for a good cause poses problem. A good cause accompanied by promptness will be executed efficiently. Come along, let us go and ask permission to perform the kirtan. So saying, they both arrived in masjid at the time. No sooner had Kaka begun to worship Baba on his own, asked what was the discussion going on in the Vada, and Kaka could not think of an answer. Immediately Baba asked Bhishma the same question in a different way. What has Bua to say? Asked Baba to him. Then Kaka remembered and disclosed the intentions. Baba liked the idea and it was decided to hold the celebration. Next day, early in the morning, seeing Baba that had gone to the Lendi, the cradle was put in the courtyard with ceremonial preparations for the kirtan. The audience assembled. Later on, Baba returned on time. Bhishma got up, Kaka sat down at the harmonium. Then Baba sent for Kaka. Baba is calling you. Hearing this, Kaka got shocked. He could not understand what happened. Let there not be a fiasco. On hearing Baba's call, Kaka became scared. Why has Baba become so angry? Will the kirtan take place without any difficulty? He walked ahead, casting backward glances. He climbed up the steps with fear. His steps were very timid. Kaka was extremely worried. Baba asked him a question as to why the cradle was tied here, and having learned in a brief story the reason behind it and the whole scheme, he was happy. Then from the niche, he took a beautiful garland and put it round Kaka's neck and gave another for Bhishma. Having heard the question about the cradle, there was anxiety all around. But when the garlands were put round the necks, everyone was at ease. Bhishma was a versatile man, well versed in narrating kathas. The kirtan was very enjoyable and all the listeners were pleased. Baba too was very pleased. According to his consent, the festival had taken place along with the bhajan, kirtan, etc. At the time of the birth of Ram, the red gulal powder that was thrown about went into Baba's eyes. Then Baba became enraged. He looked terrible like Narahari. At the hour when Rama was born in the place of Kaushalya, the gulal was just an excuse. The action implied the fervor at the birth of Ram, who would destroy the ego in the form of Ravan and wickedness in the form of Rakshas. Suddenly, he was annoyed. He became as it were Narasimha, then started abuses and curses, which were showered upon all. Radha Krishnabai was quite concerned, as she thought that the cradle would be broken into pieces. How can it be kept intact? That was the difficulty she faced. Please untie quickly. Untie. She was insistent. Kaka moved forward to untie the cradle. Then Baba got very angry and rushed forward towards Kaka. The untying of the cradle was forgotten and Baba regained his composure. When in the afternoon Baba's permission was sought, his answer surprised everyone. Why should you untie the cradle in such a hurry? It is still needed. What could the necessity be? Sai's words are never spoken in vain. When given thought of realization dawned that the festival was not yet complete. The festival had progressed up to stage, but still the dawn of next day and until the time of Gopal Kala, the festival could not be said to be complete. In this way, on the second day after the Gopal Kala and the Kirtan, Baba gave his consent to untie the cradle. Next year, Bhishma was not available. Balabua Satarkar was to be brought for the Kirtan, but he had to go to Kavate. Therefore, Balabua Bhajani, known as the modern Tukaram, was brought by Kaka Mahajani, and the festival was performed at his hands. Even if he had not been available, Kaka would have performed the Kirtan because he knew by heart all the composition about Ram Navami composed by Das Ganu. In the third year, Balabua Satarkar himself came to Shirdi in time for the occasion. Listen to that incident with respect. Having heard of Sai Baba's fame, a desire arose to him have his darshan, but he wanted company on the way, as he was wondering how he would find someone. Balabua was himself a Haridas who hailed from Satara but was living in Parel, Bombay at this time. At Brihad Siddhakavati in Satara district, there was a Devasthan where Bua did Kirtan on Ram Navami day every year, for which he was paid annually every year. Balabua was connected with two annual festivals there, Ashari Ekadashi and Ram Navami, falling in the month of Chaitra. According to the charter of the Mughal Empire, the sum of 2,400 had been allotted for the expenses of the deity, and the arrangements were made by the institution. For this two festival, Bua was paid rupees 30, but that year there was a cholera epidemic at Kavati, and the villagers were in difficulties. Therefore, the Ram Navami celebration were called off there. Bua received letters from there to come the next year as the village was deserted. In short, he lost the opportunity to serve Ram and did not also receive his allowance, but it gave him an opportunity to go to Shirdi, and therefore he met Dikshit. Dikshit was a great devotee of Baba. The desire to go to Shirdi would be fulfilled if he takes it upon himself, and along with personal gain, spiritual benefits will be achieved. He told Dikshit, as his early stipend was temporarily held back, he had thought of having Baba's darshan and performing the kirtan there. Babu Sai then replied that there was no certainty of payment. To give or not to give was the hands of Baba, and even for the kirtan permission would be required. While this conversation was going on, Kaka Mahajani came along unexpectedly and distributed Udi as prasad of Shirdi, and this was considered to be a good omen. Mahajani had just returned from Shirdi. He conveyed that all was well there and thereafter returned to his residence. Later on, Dikshit was very lovingly told Bua that he would ask for Baba's permission, and if it was granted, he would definitely let him know. As soon as you receive the letter, come to Shirdi. Do not worry about the travelling expenses. You will not have to bear them. Have no doubt about it. Later, Dikshit proceeded. Baba gave his permission. Balabua came to Shirdi and had darshan to his heart's content. Sai Baba got the elaborate festival of Ram Navami performed in his presence with great love at the hands of Balabua. Balabua was happy at heart. The objective had been fulfilled. Sri Sai was also pleased. Thus everyone's wish were fulfilled. His expectations were more than fulfilled. Rupees 150 was ordered to be received by him, and Bua was extremely happy. Why shouldn't Balabua be happy when Baba gave as much earnings as he would have had in 5 years at Kavate for one festival? Thus, he was indebted to Baba. Later on, when Das Ganu was once in Shirdi, Baba, on being so entreated, entrusted Das Ganu with the performance of the Kirtan at the festival every year. Since then, till this day, at Janmotsav is celebrated with a lot of pomp and pageantry. Food is distributed to the heart's content, and the poor and downtrodden are happy. At the main gate of the Samadhi Mandir, accompanied by the music played by the traditional instrument, the chant of Baba's name resounds in the skies and the atmosphere suffused with joy. Just as he had thought of the Yatra and the Urus, Gopal Gan was inspired in the same manner to give a new book to the old dilapidated masjid. As the devotee, Gopal Gan decided to renovate the masjid by his own hands. He got the stones ready, but the renovation work was not ordained for Gan. The occasion for the auspicious work arose later appropriately. It appears that Baba wished that the renovation should be done by Nana, and afterwards the paving of the floor should be done by Kaka. Accordingly, it happened later on. In the beginning, they had got tired and of asking for the permission. Then they made Mahaspati, the mediator of Baba, gave his permission. So be it. When the paving of the floor of the masjid was completed in one night, then the next day itself Baba came and sat on the gadi. It was the year in 1911 that the Sabha Mandap was constructed. It was a difficult and Herculean task. It involved a lot of hazards and people trembled with fear. This work was also completed by the devotees working at nights in the same way and under similar circumstances. In the night, the pillars would be erected with great difficulties, and in the morning, Baba would start uprooting them again. Seizing the opportunity, they would be re-erected. Thus, everybody got exhausted. Everybody girded up their loins, turned night into day to fulfillment, their objective undergoing and a lot of exertion. Dixit thought that the site was a proper place to construct the Sabha Mandap, where there was earlier an open ground and a small playground. Putting in as much money as was needed for iron columns and angle brackets, the work was finished as and when Baba was at the Chavadi. The devotees would turn night into day and erect the pillars with much effort. But as soon as Baba returned from the Chavadi, he would pull them out. Highly incensed, on one occasion Baba caught Tatya by his neck with one hand and with the other shook the pillar and tried to uproot it. He loosened it by shaking it, removed the headgear of Tatya, kindled it by lighting the matchstick, and threw it into the pit with anger. At the time, his eyes looked like fireballs. Who would dare to look straight into them? Everyone had lost their courage. Immediately, he put his hand on his pocket, took out a rupee and threw it there, as if to mark the auspicious moment. Curses and abuses were showered. Tatya was also very scared at heart. It seemed very difficult situation, so had it all happened. All the onlookers were surprised and distressed. What is this bad omen today? How can this difficulty which had befallen Tatya be warded off? Bagoji Shinde took the courage and cautiously moved forward. He also fell an easy prey and was given a sound beating by Baba. Madhav Rao was also caught by him and received a shower of brickbats. Whoever dared to intervene was similarly favored by Baba. Who would venture to go before Baba, and how could Tatya be rescued? As they were talking like this, Baba's anger subsided and he calmed down. Promptly, a shopkeeper was called and a zari bordered headgear was ordered. He himself tied it around Tatya's head like a Raja who bestows a mark of favor. People wondered and did not know the reason for the anger and this attack on Tatya and the reason for Baba's making this hullabaloo. What was the reason for getting angry and in the next few moments turning into a pleasant mood? The root cause could not be known by anyone. Sometimes he was calmed and talked lovingly, sometimes for no apparent reason. In the twinkling of an eye, he would be agitated unexpectedly. So be it, such are the stories of Baba. As I relate one, I recall another. Which should I narrate and which withhold? The tendency to diversify is not proper. I have no preferences and make no choice. Whichever story is appropriate for the occasion will fulfill the desires of the listeners and fill their hearts with joy. In the next chapter, listen to the tales gathered from the old people whether Baba was a Hindu or a Muslim. I shall repeat that I have heard as best as I can how the money collected as dakshina was utilized for renovation and how he mortified his flesh through dhoti poti and khanda yoga, how he toiled for the benefit of others and warded off the difficulties, and his devotees will be clarified in the next chapter. The listeners will be pleased. May there be well-being. In this end of the sixth chapter, the narration of the story of Ram Janam celebrations, the Sai Satcharita, written by devotee Hemantpant, impelled by the saints and virtuous people. This is offered to Sri Sadguru Sainath. May there be auspiciousness. Om Sai.